If you've been in the Warhammer 40k community for long enough, or even if you've only been tangentially related, you may have seen this clip online.
Assault phase. They can't charge anything. They advanced. You can use the strat.
When do I have to use it?
When you advance.
We talked about it. We all said we knew what I was doing.
I'm not gonna let you do this.
What?
I'm not gonna let you do this. I'm sorry.
This comes from a series of games that had transformative effects across the competitive community. So today, I want to talk about exactly what's going on in this situation and how it had a positive impact in how competitive 40k is conducted now. What's up, folks? Welcome back to TacticalTortoise. My name is Trevi, and we're looking at some clips from the 2018 Las Vegas Open Finals. Las Vegas Open is the largest single Warhammer 40,000 event of the season every single year. Nowadays, it rocks somewhere between 1,000 to 1,200 players, and even 7 years ago, it was still pulling close to 600. That made it one of the capstones for the season. It completed the ITC season each year, which meant that the winner of the Las Vegas Open also typically came away as the ITC season winner, which was the de facto world champion at that stage. In terms of competitive 40k, this was essentially the world finals. Now, in this case, we are looking at the final day of the event, the final 3 games to determine who will be the Las Vegas Open 2018 champion, and based on their placement, potentially the ITC season champion. On this day, in the semifinals of the event, 2 players were paired, Tony Gruppando as well as Alexander Fennel. Now, at the time of Warhammer 40,000, the metagame was pretty skewed towards Eldar, and specifically a subfaction called Ynnari. Ynnari are a death-worshipping sect of Eldar that gain bonuses when things die around them. This was represented mechanically in 8th edition by a mechanic called Soul Burst. Whenever a unit was destroyed nearby a Ynnari unit, that unit could act as if it was a different phase. For example, if a Ynnari unit charged in and destroyed an enemy unit in melee, they could then choose to act as if it was the movement phase, making a move to escape retribution or move in to attack future targets. Similarly, if a Ynnari unit shot an enemy to death while nearby them, they could soul burst to fire a second time or to move into cover. The mechanic was abusively powerful and made Eldari hands down the most powerful faction in the game for that particular time frame.
We're about to see our first table on the stream, I think, here, Dave, real quick. So we're at the end of round 3.
Best thing to do is fall back.
Nick just totally dominated. The Shining Spears, unstoppable in the middle of the table, just eating troops up.
Now, Tony in this semifinals game was playing Ynnari. He was the overwhelming favorite to win against what was a pretty weird Imperial soup list coming from Alex Fennel. Now, in 8th edition, armies were broken down into detachments. Nowadays, detachments give you bonuses for your army based on a particular theme, but at the time, a detachment was a collection of units that you would form together into a full army. These detachments didn't have to come from the same faction, so you could do things like take Imperial Guard backed up by Space Marines with an Imperial Knight as an ally. In this case, many Imperial armies used what were called Imperium soup or even Space Marine soup lists, where they would take an amalgamation of different characters and units in different detachments from separate subfactions to get the best version of each incarnation. If you wanted a powerful melee unit, you would usually take it from Blood Angels. If you wanted a powerful shooting battery, you would take it from something like Iron Hands, and if you wanted a high volume unit to score objectives, you would take some Astra Militarum. Alex's list was focused very heavily on melee. He had several characters from a variety of different Space Marine chapters, as well as a number of Thunderwolf cavalry to act as the backbone to his list. Very close combat melee focused. In this case, Tony Gruppando alpha struck this melee-oriented Space Marine army, dealing a lot of damage, but his initial aggression kind of failed. He actually did much less damage than both he and the commentators at the time had expected, giving Alex a way to win the game.
Ooh, Dave, do we have a battle going on or what?
You know, you don't see this stuff every day. I thought Alex was done. How's he holding up like that?
You know, he's got some great saves out there. The captain's got cover. Harold Deathwolf has a 2-up versus shooting, 3-up, and melee. The Shining Spears got in there. He thought he was going to kill that other Wolf Lord and just woofed. Woofed on it and wasn't able to put him down.
Not quite how I wanted that to go, Alex. I can see that.
So Tony passed the turn over to Alex, and excitedly, Alex started measuring out positions to place his deep striking units. Now, at this stage, in both 8th and 9th edition, we were very much in the throes of Hero Hammer. Characters with enhancements like relics and warlord traits were inordinately effective. And one of the benefits of this kind of soup army is that you could take the most powerful characters with the best traits from chapters or sub-factions that had the best bonuses for them. Space Marine captains with bonus attacks and additional bonuses to charge, gaining additional strength and attacks when they did charge, were all over the place, and you could find a 4 damage Thunderhammer on every street corner. So Alex, absorbing this blow, was now able to counterattack, with Space Marine captains and Imperial assassins coming out of reserve. Now, in Warhammer 40,000, reserves always arrive at the end of your movement phase. After all of your army has moved, you can then bring in your units from off the table, whether they're teleporting to the battlefield, parachuting down, or outflanking your opponent off of a table edge. It is important to note, however, this must occur after everything has moved. So, Alex, getting excited to place his reserves down, very carefully measures out all of their respective positions.
You know what? Let's just.
I'm sure that he's.
Just push it where. Where do you think it should be?
I don't think you can get this. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
All right, that's fine. So we'll just shuffle that. That's cool. So.
It's hard to eyeball that, but I think he's like there. As close as you can get.
So 9.
And 9 is too close to this guy, so he actually.
Yeah,
is
you
like...
put him where he has to be. That's fine.
Then goes to move one of his Thunderwolf cavalry units.
Oh, this was the end of the movement phase. Dropping the guys in.
Ah, for fuck's sake.
In this case, Tony says, hold up for a minute. You've already placed your reserves. Now it's the end of your movement phase, and the rest of your army cannot move. The Twitch chat went wild. As you can imagine, this is backbreaking for a primarily melee-focused Space Marine army. Most of Alex's pieces were now out of threat range and had no capacity to interact with them on the battlefield. Now, it should be noted that in 8th edition Warhammer 40,000, as now, pre-measuring is allowed. And what will typically occur is a player will say, I'm going to see where I can set up. I'm going to pre-measure where my reserves can arrive so that I know where on the battlefield I need to be with my other units, so that I leave space for them, or so that I don't overcommit into a particular area of the battlefield. However, this technically does need to be enunciated. Whether or not you are pre-measuring or actually taking a game action should be told to your opponent. And because that was never made clear, Tony took that as Alex passing his movement phase and did not allow him to go back and move the remainder of his army. Now, this is technically true, but an enormous dick move. No new information has been gained from these models being set up on the battlefield. You are able to place proxy bases or to predetermine whether or not your models can fit into a particular area before you decide to take any game actions. But because Alex didn't enunciate that, the judges sided with Tony that Alex could no longer move his models. Now, Alex immediately offered the concession to his opponent. That was a game-ending interaction.
Sorry, man. I gotta hold you to it.
Yeah, good game. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's. I think you win anyway. I'd like to play.
However, seconds later, he thought better of it.
Okay, you know what? Nothing else moves. So the guys that moved have already moved. Yeah, we'll keep on.
And said, let's play the game out, and continued to play out, slowly being tabled by a superior Eldari army.
No, I mean, I'll take the win and we can play it out for fun, but...
You're absolutely right.
Now, happy to take the win, Tony moved on to the final round, where he played against Nick Nanavati, which is a name, if you're familiar with competitive Warhammer 40,000, who's probably very familiar to you. He is the founder of the Art of War Warhammer 40k coaching service and YouTube channel, and he has won both the ITC in seasons past, as well as the Las Vegas Open. He's an incredibly accomplished player and is known for being largely gregarious and friendly at the tabletop.
Good fucking game, man. Really good game. Take it easy. Okay, let's see. Yeah, dude, great job. I'm happy I got there.
Now, Tony's army was composed largely of Ynnari to act as his hammer blow units that could skirmish with the opponent to destroy enemies and use their deaths to perform their soul burst actions to move again or attack multiple times. However, he did also include a detachment of another Eldar subfaction, the same Han, who focus on bikers and fast aggressive units. The benefit here is that it gave you access to not only slightly more effective bikers than you would get out of Ynnari, but also you got access to a stratagem that allowed those units to advance and charge, giving them bonuses throughout the entire turn when they did so. However, the stratagem had to be used when a unit was selected to advance. So, in its movement phase, 2 phases removed from when it would then use the effect of the stratagem to charge. There were a lot of this in previous editions of Warhammer 40,000, and in fact, Ynnari also had a stratagem to advance and charge their units with a different timing than the same hand stratagem, which was very confusing. Now, normally, this would not be that much of an issue. issue, because it's clear that when you advance your melee unit up towards your opponent's unit, you are intending to use your stratagem to advance and charge. However, Tony never stated this. He simply moved his unit, moved on to his shooting phase, attacked his opponent, then moved on to his charge phase, at which time Nick informed him,
Assault phase.
They can't charge anything if they advanced. You can use the strat
When do I have to use it?
when you advance.
Oh,
I don't want to get you like that, but you got Alex on that.
oh my god.
Sorry.
Okay, I didn't say it ever, so.
Didn't say it. Didn't take the pain points down.
I mean,
I don't like winning like this at all, but
yeah, well, we talked about it, we all said we knew what I was doing.
yeah.
So it's like,
I'm sure
you
you know what
measured it
Alex
for
was
me.
doing when you didn't move the
No,
stuff
it was
in
different. He just forgot to move.
I'm not gonna let you do this.
What?
I'm not gonna let you do this. I'm sorry.
you have never used the stratagem that allows you to charge, and the timing window has closed for that strat. You are no longer able to use it, meaning that your powerful, expensive melee biker brick of shining spears simply must stand there and be shot to death by my own Ynnari army. When Tony protested this, Nick brought up the fact that Tony had done exactly the same thing to Alex Fennel in his previous game. And while according to Nick, he wouldn't normally play with such a fastidious adherence to the correct timing of the rules, because Tony had started to make a habit of catching his opponent on these particular ability timings, he elected to hold Tony to the current game state.
Sean on the time.
I know, man, but I told you, like we said, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, I knew your plan, so burst off the guys, whatever.
So I just literally didn't say I'm using the stratagem, even though I said you know what I'm doing, you know what I'm doing. Like we agreed that you knew what I was doing, which includes using the
I
stratagem.
mean, I wouldn't
Nick.
normally play like this, but literally because like it happened the past 2 games with you.
It's different because we agreed. You said you know what I'm doing. Like you knew the plan.
When you played
we
Alex,
were on the same
you agreed
page.
to play a friendly game where, you know, loosey-goosey and, you know, intense essentially.
That's not about intent though.
This is
different
absolutely
when we agree on an action.
Not
you agree
moving
what
your
I'm
armies
doing.
intense, not using a stratagem's intense.
I don't think so.
This was then adjudicated by a judge at the table who agreed with Nick. The timing window had closed for the stratagem. The unit could no longer advance and charge.
So I'm trying to make sure you guys know what's going on. Tony wants to charge his Bright Lances into those units, but he advanced them. There's a strategy that allows him to charge after advancing. Stratagem, thank you, but you have to spend it at the right time. You have to spend it before they actually advance. He told Nick that that was his plan, but then he didn't spend it at the right time. Now he wants to declare a charge, and Nick is saying, no, you can't because you didn't spend the stratagem at the right time. The judge is getting up, he's getting involved. We'll get this worked out, and we'll see how it goes.
And in a similar situation to the Alex Fennel game, that forced Tony to watch as his powerful units were slowly obliterated. Now, Tony did protest this quite a bit, saying that the situation was somehow very different than his opponent for getting to progress through his entire movement phase, but Nick remained adamant. And you could even tell throughout the game that Nick's conduct was a little short-tempered. He was getting a little bit tired of his opponent's conduct.
Can't believe I'm gonna lose to you at LVO and Adepticon in the finals. I hate you so much, Nick.
I wrote your list, it's only fair.
Now, this situation absolutely blew up and reframed how the community views playing by intent versus playing by the rules as they are written. If you were to play in a large-scale Warhammer 40,000 tournament now, this situation would almost certainly never arise. Players at the highest echelons of competitive play in current edition, 10th edition Warhammer 40,000 would never hold their opponent to such strict timing. The game is simply very complex, has a lot going on, and it's easy to miss small timing windows like this.
Oh, I had a little misstep. I'm already double moving this guy. Do you care if I just move him back right here?
you're good.
That's perfect. I was like, I'm going to double move Magnus. Then I was like, actually, I'm double moving multiple models. Right there, just so I'm as far away from this berserk.
And this game was really a turning point for the community, which forced a lot of players and communities to reevaluate how they conducted themselves over the course of the game, especially because you do have to keep in mind that as soon as you play an opponent who has a similar ethos and is willing to call you on any tiny mistakes that you make, you may be hoisted by your own petard. There's really no benefit to playing like this. You may be able to get a cheeky win somewhere, but as soon as the rest of the community knows that you are willing to play in an unsportsmanlike manner, they are not going to pull any punches with you. And ultimately, you'll just end up losing in the finals rather than the semifinals. I also think that this situation kind of disenchanted the community with the idea of cash prizes. At this point, the players were playing for a $4,000 cash prize, so it was a pretty high-tension situation. While that's not the most insane amount of money ever when compared to other sporting events or even the cost of a Warhammer 40,000 army, especially nowadays, that is still a lot to put on the line, and it does in some cases bring out the worst in players. At the time in 7th and 8th edition, there was this idea that Warhammer 40,000 could become a competitive esports style of event where cash prizes and advertising could potentially buoy the level of competition and the spectacle of the game to a higher level. However, since instances like this, that has really fallen off, and I think most players will agree that it's largely better to keep cash prizes and the prize pool for 40k events limited because of how loosey-goosey the game can be in some cases. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that I think there is a narrative, especially recently, since there have been some pretty high-profile cheating and misplay controversies in the competitive space, that the competitive Warhammer community is all rotten. And that's absolutely not the case. And I think this is kind of the exception that proves the rule. Nowadays, if you look at high-level competitive Warhammer 40,000, it looks so different than the situations that we find in this game. We find players working with each other to accurately measure out distances and to ensure that the game is conducted in a fair manner, rather than trying to one-up each other by catching each other on missed timings.
These guys are done it, if you don't mind, before I move that rhino.
Just hop in it?
Yeah,
go for it.
You good for that? All right. Long. All right.
And in my opinion, that's immensely positive for the game. And the number of situations that occur like this, which used to happen relatively commonly in 8th edition, has dropped exponentially. Now, the level of sportsmanship and fair play that we see on competitive 40k tables the world over is phenomenally better. And high-profile instances like this have helped shape the community perception to adopt that ethos. Now, in response to this situation, Mark Merrill, aka Trindamir, the co-founder of Riot Games, was actually in the Twitch chat for this game watching the stream. And he was so impressed by Alex Fennell's response to his opponent's unsportsmanlike conduct that he actually offered a $5,000 cash prize directly to Alex on Twitter. Now, this was picked up by Frontline Gaming, the runners of the Las Vegas Open, who forwarded to Alex, who in fact refused the prize, saying that he didn't believe he did anything particularly out of the ordinary.
At that moment, I knew that something that started out as maybe not the most pleasant situation was going to turn into something really cool and really special, but we had no idea how cool and how special it was going to become until we alerted Alex, and almost immediately Alex said, I will give all the money to a charity. And Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's all going to a children's hospital.
It's going to go to the Connecticut Children's Hospital Foundation, and that's, and again, to echo Reese's point, I've got dozens of guys running up showing me their phones with your tweet on it, and I've got to be honest as well, it took me a second to realise that, it's someone giving me $5,000. Well, it did feel that that's something I should keep because I didn't do anything out of the ordinary that I would normally do. So I figure it can be better put to better use with a children's charity. Very recently, that charity had run a 24-hour gaming event at my local store, which we all turned up and played board games out, and we raised a few $1,000s for them, I think. When I got back to the office, it turns out my company will match donations. So it was a pretty simple matter to turn the generous gift from you, Mark, into 10.
And also Games Workshop, turning that into $15,000 raised for charity. And in the years since, this became a little bit of a tradition. Alex would actually go out to play a memorial game to raise donations for charity at the Las Vegas Open every year. Now, I've actually streamed Alex Fennell on my own channel, and while he is a little forgetful of the rules occasionally, he is an absolute sweetheart to live stream, and his really laid back and kind attitude really comes out in all of his gameplay. So it's no surprise to me that something positive would come out of this situation. Not only in the fact that it has raised money for charities, but also in the fact that it has inspired the community to take a more sportsmanlike approach to high-level competitive play rather than simply trying to win. And having received his just desserts, Tony Grupondo has actually become a little bit of a punchline in the Warhammer 40k community. Despite the fact that this happened before I started playing modern 40k, I was still a War Machine and Hordes person at this point, and I hadn't really touched 40k since its early editions. I heard people telling each other not to be a Tony Grupondo or not to Grupondo each other by catching them on the minutia of this timing. And that is not a legacy that you necessarily want. I even heard this game referenced as recently as the Nova Open, which I played in a couple weeks ago. So it goes to show you that, well, wins are temporary. People's memory of your poor sportsmanship is forever. And there's really no winners in a game where you're only trying to get ahead by screwing over the other player. So that's everything about what is, I believe, the most infamous series of games in Warhammer 40,000 that had transformative effects on the community. I want to thank some people who made the making of this video possible. This was originally streamed on Twitch on the Frontline Gaming TV Twitch channel, which unfortunately does not archive its games. So, were it not for some archive channels, all of this footage would have been lost. The YouTube user Andreas Peak, which I think is how you pronounce his name, has archived recordings of the entire games. So if you want to watch all of the interactions between these players, you can find them on his channel there. Frontline Gaming also conducted interviews with Nick Nanavati, Mark Merrill, and Alex Fennell after this whole situation was resolved, where a lot of this information comes from as well. They have also archived their live streams for the 2019 finals and quarterfinals, but the semifinals game of Alex versus Tony is not hosted on their channel. And with that's it for me today. Thanks to everyone who supports Tactical Tortoise, whether that's over on Patreon at patreon.com/tacticaltortoise, YouTube channel membership you can join right here, or the folks who subscribe to me over on Twitch, where I play all of my online Warhammer gameplay. I don't put sponsors in any of these videos where I'm talking about community issues or drama, so all of those people help me keep the lights on over here while I construct these videos. Big thanks to them. Thanks to you for watching all the way to the end of the video. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.